Peace had settled over the Alliance like morning mist over a calm sea. Trade flourished. Children from both species played together in shared parks. Empress Lyra and Daniel were no longer just symbols of unity. They were its quiet architects, shaping a future where fear did not dictate fate. Yet even the clearest skies can gather storm clouds, and the universe had not finished testing them. It began with a whisper, a rumor drifting through the outer colonies. A lost ship, not human, not Synthari. Something older, something silent. At first, Lyra dismissed it as spacers' tales, ghost stories told to pass the time in deep space. But then the whispers grew louder. 3 freighters vanished near the Rimward Nebula. No distress calls, no debris, just empty space where ships should have been. Daniel brought the reports to her in the garden, where she sat reading human poetry beneath the twin suns. He looked tired. His eyes held the weight of old worries returning. They are not just missing, he said. They are erased, like they never existed. Lyra closed the book. Show me the data. In the war room, holograms flickered above the table. The vanished ships all followed the same route. All passed through Sector 9, a region long considered empty, a void between known systems. But now faint energy traces lingered there. Not Synthari, not human, alien in a way that made even the most seasoned analysts uneasy. We should send a scout, Daniel said. We should send nothing until we understand what we face, Elder Vorlin countered. This could be a test, a lure. Lyra studied the patterns. The disappearances were too precise, too clean. This was not piracy. This was something else. I will go, she said. The council protested, but Daniel did not. He simply nodded. Then I go with you. They took the Dawn Chaser again, its hull now bearing the scars of past journeys. The crew was small, only those who had proven their loyalty and courage. Among them was Lisa, the human pilot, and Tyel, a young Zenthari engineer who had once been a skeptic but now believed in the Alliance more than most. As they entered Sector 9, the stars seemed to dim. The ship's sensors flickered. Comms went silent. Even the hum of the engine sounded muffled, as if space itself was swallowing sound. Then they saw it. Floating in the center of the void was a structure, not a ship, not a station. It was a sphere of black metal, seamless, featureless, kilometers wide. It gave off no heat, no signal, yet it pulled at the Dawn Chaser like a moon pulls the tide. Hold position, Lyra ordered, but the ship would not obey. It drifted forward, powerless, as if drawn by an invisible hand. Alarms blared, then died. Lights dimmed. For a moment, all was still. Then a door appeared on the sphere's surface. Smooth, silent, open. We are being invited, Daniel said. Or trapped, Tyel whispered. Lyra made her choice. Lower the shuttle. Daniel and I will go in. Inside the sphere there was no gravity, no walls. Just endless corridors that bent in impossible ways. The air smelled of ozone and something ancient like stone buried for millennia. Their boots made no sound. Their breath echoed strangely as if the place listened. After what felt like hours, they reached a chamber. In its center floated a being. It had no eyes, no mouth, no limbs. Just a shifting form of light and shadow, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. You are not of the silence, it spoke. Not with sound, but directly into their minds. We are of the Alliance, Lyra replied, her thoughts steady. The Alliance is noise. Chaos. The being's presence felt cold, vast. We are the keepers. The end of cycles. Your kind spreads like fire, burning, building, forgetting. We remove the flame before it consumes all. You took our ships, Daniel said. Our people. They were already lost, the being answered. Their minds filled with war, even in peace. We offered them silence. Peace without struggle. That is not peace, Lyra said. That is death wearing peace's clothes. The being pulsed brighter. You resist. Yet you are small. Your alliance is young, fragile. One spark and it will shatter. Perhaps, Lyra said, but even small flames can light the dark. The being fell silent. Then it showed them visions. Galaxies burning, civilizations rising and falling in endless war, itself appearing again and again, wiping the slate clean. It believed it was mercy. You see only the end, Daniel said, not the journey. Not the love, the art, the hope that grows even in broken places. The being hesitated. For the first time, its light flickered uncertainly. Lyra stepped forward. We do not ask you to trust us, only to wait. Give us one cycle. One chance to prove that peace can last without your silence. Why should we? The being asked. Because once a human saved a Xanthari in the dark, Lyra said, and that small act changed everything. If one act can do that, imagine what many can do. The chamber trembled. The corridors shifted. The being's form softened. You carry the echo of that moment, it said, looking at Daniel. It is rare, perhaps worth watching. The sphere released them. The dawn chaser powered back on as if waking from sleep. Behind them, the black sphere vanished, folding into itself until nothing remained. They returned to zero with no proof, only a story. Many doubted them, but Lyra and Daniel knew the truth. The universe held older powers, watching, waiting, and for now, they had been given a chance. Back on the capital world, life continued, but both Lyra and Daniel carried the weight of what they had seen. They worked harder than ever to strengthen the alliance, not just with treaties but with trust. They visited schools, shared meals with settlers, listened to the worries of ordinary people. One day, a human child asked Daniel if he was afraid of the dark. He thought of the black sphere, of the silence that wanted to erase everything. Then he thought of Lyra's hand on his shoulder in that impossible place. No, he said, because even in the darkest place, someone might be waiting to help you. Years passed. The alliance grew stronger. New colonies bloomed. And though the black sphere never returned, its lesson remained. Peace was not the absence of danger, but the choice to face it together. Lyra never remarried. Daniel never left. They did not need titles or vows. Their bond was written in every decision they made, every life they saved, every bridge they built between worlds. In the garden, now filled with flowers from 100 worlds, they sat side by side as the twin suns set. The stars came out one by one. Do you think they are watching? Daniel asked. Lyra smiled. Let them watch. We have nothing to hide. And in that quiet moment under the endless sky, two souls who had once been strangers in the void found not just peace, but purpose, and that more than anything was worth protecting. Long after Empress Lyra and Daniel were gone, their story lived, not in stone or statues, but in the quiet rhythm of daily life across the Alliance. Children played in parks where human laughter mixed with Xanthari song. Ships with blended crews sailed between stars, their hulls painted with symbols of unity. The archive of light grew, now containing not just memories of the founders, but millions of small acts of courage from ordinary people. Yet even legacies must face new shadows, and the universe never runs out of darkness. It began with silence. Not the silence of the keepers, but something colder. A signal vanished. Not a ship this time, but an entire colony's communication array. On Viridia Prime, a world known for its peace schools and shared libraries. No distress call, no warning, just stillness. At first, the Alliance Council assumed technical failure, but when 3 more colonies went quiet within a week, fear stirred again. Unlike the dream sickness or the exile crisis, this felt different. There were no dreams, no rebels, no ancient beings, just empty worlds, their cities intact, their people gone, not dead, not taken, simply absent, as if they had walked into the forest one morning and never returned. The current Empress, Nara, a granddaughter of Lyra's adopted line, called an emergency session. She was young, barely past her first century, but her eyes held the same silver calm that had once defined her ancestor. Beside her stood Captain Eli, a human Xanthari hybrid who had grown up reading Daniel's journals and studying Lyra's speeches. He was not just a pilot. He was a bridge. We cannot panic, Nara said to the council. Panic is what they want. Who is they? Demanded an elder. There is no enemy. Perhaps the enemy is time itself, Eli said softly, or the belief that peace is permanent. Nara agreed. We must go, not with fleets, not with fear, but with open eyes and open hearts. They chose a small ship, the Second Dawn, named in honor of the original. Its crew was small, 5 humans, 5 Xanthari, and 2 hybrids like Eli. They carried no weapons, only sensors, medical kits, and copies of the archive. Their mission was not to fight, but to understand. Viridia Prime greeted them with eerie beauty. Trees swayed in the breeze. Birds sang. The schoolyards were clean, but the homes were empty. Meals sat on tables, cold but untouched. Toys lay in the grass as if dropped mid-game. No signs of struggle. No footprints leading away. Eli walked the main street, his boots silent on the stone path. He stopped at a classroom. On the chalkboard, written in both languages, was a sentence. We choose to stay kind. Nara joined him. Whoever left, they did not run. They chose to go. But why? Eli asked. They searched for days. No clues, no energy traces, no hidden tunnels. Just absence. Then in the planet's central garden, a place modeled after Lyra and Daniel's original, they found something. A single data crystal placed carefully on a stone bench beneath an old oak tree. It played a message, not from colonists, but from a voice none recognized. Calm, genderless, ancient. You have built well, it said. Your peace is real. Your love is true. But you have forgotten one thing. Peace is not the end of struggle. It is the beginning of responsibility. We have watched. And now we test not your strength, but your memory. The screen shifted, showed images of the vanished colonists, not captured, not harmed. Standing on a distant world, smiling, planting seeds in new soil, they had not been taken. They had been invited, offered a chance to build again, far from the Alliance, to see if their values could survive without support, without history, without heroes. You may follow, the voice said, but know this, if you go with anger, they stay. If you go with trust, they return. The choice is yours. Nara and Eli stood in silence. The council would demand action, fleets answers. But this was not a war. It was a lesson. They returned to Zyra not with proof of invasion, but with a question. Do we believe in what we have built enough to let it be tested? The debate raged for days. Some called it a trick. Others saw wisdom. Nara listened to all, then spoke. Lyra and Daniel did not build this alliance so we could control others. They built it so others could choose. If our people left willingly, we must respect that. And if they wish to return, we must welcome them without shame. She ordered no rescue, no pursuit, only a message sent across all channels. Wherever you are loved. Whenever you return, you are home. Months passed, then a year. The alliance held its breath. Some feared collapse. Instead, something unexpected happened. Communities grew closer. Neighbors checked on each other. Schools taught not just history but empathy. The archive was updated daily with new stories. Of farmers sharing water during drought. Of Xanthari healers walking miles to treat human children. Of humans teaching Xanthari elders to use new tech. The absence had not broken them. It had reminded them why they stayed. Then, on the first anniversary of the vanishings, a ship appeared in orbit over Zira. Not armed, not cloaked, just a simple transport. It carried the Viridia colonists and others from the missing worlds. They had chosen to return. Why? Nara asked when they met in the garden. Because we remembered, said a young woman, her skin the soft violet of Xanthari, her eyes the brown of humans. We built a new village. It was beautiful. But it felt hollow. Because we realized peace is not a place. It is a promise we make to each other every day, and we missed making it with you. Nara embraced her. Welcome home. In the years that followed, the alliance changed. It became less about structure and more about spirit. Colonies were free to leave, to experiment, to grow in their own ways. But most stayed, not out of duty, but choice. The founder's dream had matured into something living, breathing, and free. Eli became a teacher, traveling from world to world, telling the story not of how Lyra and Daniel saved each other, but of how they taught others to save themselves. He always ended the same way. Kindness is not weakness. It is the bravest thing you can choose. Nara ruled not from a throne, but from the garden. She held meetings under the old oak, where children played and elders rested. She wore no crown, only a simple band woven from earthgrass and Xiran vine. One evening, as the twin sun set, a young girl asked her, "Will the alliance last forever?" Nara smiled. Nothing lasts forever. But as long as someone chooses kindness over fear, someone tells the old stories, someone plants a seed in strange soil and says, "This is home," then the spirit of Lyra and Daniel lives. And that is enough. The stars watched. The universe listened. And somewhere in the quiet between galaxies, the keepers nodded. The flame still burned, not because it was protected, but because it was passed on. And so the story continued, not with battles or empires, but with hands reaching across differences, with voices saying, "I see you," with hearts remembering that even in the vast dark, no one needs to be alone. Time flowed like a quiet river through the heart of the Alliance. Cities rose on once barren moons. Xanthari children learned human songs. Human elders studied Xanthari philosophy. Empress, Lyra, and Daniel moved through it all not as rulers but as guides, steady hands shaping a future neither species could have imagined alone. Yet even rivers carve canyons, and peace, no matter how deep, always faces new tests. The first sign came not from the stars but from within, a sickness. Not of the body but of the mind. It began in the outer colonies, settlers reporting strange dreams, visions of endless voids, of silent spheres, of voices whispering that all effort was meaningless. At first it was dismissed as stress, isolation, the price of living on the edge of known space. But then the dreams spread. Even on Zyra, citizens spoke of waking in cold sweat, convinced that nothing they built would last. Daniel noticed it first in Lisa, the pilot. She had always been sharp, quick with a joke. Now she sat for hours staring at the stars, saying little. When he asked her what was wrong, she whispered, "What is the point if it all ends the same?" Lyra called a meeting of healers, both human and Xanthari. They found no virus, no toxin. The sickness was psychic, subtle, seeping into thoughts like mist. It left no physical trace, only a growing despair. "It is them," Daniel said quietly one night in the garden. "The keepers." They did not attack. They planted doubt. Lyra agreed. "They are testing us, not with force but with fear. If we lose hope, we destroy ourselves." They could not fight an enemy that lived in dreams. Weapons were useless. Laws could not stop whispers in the mind. So they chose a different path. They chose memory. Lyra ordered the creation of the Archive of Light, a vast digital library containing every story of courage, every act of kindness, every moment the Alliance had overcome darkness. Human poets recorded verses about second chances. Xanthari elders shared tales of mercy in ancient wars. Children drew pictures of shared festivals, of mixed families, of ships flying both flags. Daniel traveled to the colonies, not as an envoy, but as a listener. He sat with settlers in their homes, heard their fears, and reminded them of why they came. "You built this," he would say, "not because it was easy, but because it mattered." Slowly the tide turned. The dreams did not vanish, but people learned to fight them with truth. When the whisper came, "Nothing lasts," they answered with memory. "Remember Kalis? Remember the garden? Remember the day the Empress walked into the dark to save strangers?" Then came the day a young Xanthari girl on a distant moon woke from a nightmare and did not cry. Instead, she turned on her light, opened the archive, and played Daniel's voice telling the story of the rescue in the nebula. Her fear faded. She slept again, this time with hope. But the true test came when Elder Vorlan fell ill, not with the dream sickness but with age. His body weakened. His mind, once sharp as a blade, grew foggy. In his confusion, he began to speak of the old wars, of human treachery, of the need to purge the weak. Lyra visited him in his chambers. He did not recognize her at first. He called her traitor, fool, weakling. She did not argue. She sat beside him and told him stories, not of battles but of moments. The day he first held his granddaughter, the time he shared tea with a human doctor who saved his life, the quiet pride in his eyes when the first joint school opened. Slowly his anger softened. Tears welled in his old eyes. "I am afraid," he whispered. "Of death," she asked, "of being forgotten, of our people losing themselves in this new world." "You will not be forgotten," she said, "and our people are not losing themselves. They are becoming more." He died 3 days later peacefully with her hand in his. At his funeral, humans and Xanthari stood together. Daniel spoke not of his fierceness but of his growth, of how even the hardest hearts can learn to bend. After that, the dream sickness lost its power. People realized that fear of the future could be answered with love for the present. The keepers, watching from whatever silent realm they dwelled in, saw that their test had failed. The alliance did not crumble. It deepened. Years passed. Lyra's hair turned silver, not just from age but from the weight of leadership. Daniel's steps slowed, but his eyes still held that quiet fire. They never married in ceremony, but everyone knew they were bound by something deeper than vows. One day, a message arrived from the rimward edge. A new species had been found. Small, timid, hiding in asteroid caves. They had watched the alliance from afar, too afraid to reach out. They had seen the rescue of Kalis. They had heard the stories in the archive, and now, trembling, they asked for help. Lyra and Daniel looked at each other. Without words, they knew what to do. They took the Dawn Chaser one last time, not as Empress and advisor, but as elders, as witnesses. They brought no soldiers, only teachers, healers, and a single crate of earth seeds and Zyran saplings. When they met the new species, a people with soft blue skin and eyes like starlight, they did not speak of treaties or trade. Daniel knelt and offered a seed. Lyra showed them the archive, not as a record of power, but as an invitation. "You are not alone," she said. The blue-eyed leader wept. "For generations, we thought kindness was a myth." "It is real," Daniel said, "and it grows when shared." On the journey back, Lyra stood on the observation deck watching the stars blur past. Daniel joined her, leaning on a cane now, but smiling. "Do you think they will make it?" she asked. "They have us as an example," he said. "That is a good start." She took his hand. "We did not build a perfect world." "No," he agreed, "but we built a world worth saving." Back on Zyra, they retired from public life. Not because they were tired, but because their work was done. Others would lead now. Young voices raised in unity, ready to carry the torch. They spent their days in the garden, now vast and wild, filled with plants from 100 worlds. Children played among the trees, some violet-skinned, some brown, some with both. They did not see difference, only friends. One evening, as the twin suns set in a blaze of gold and violet, Daniel sat on their favorite bench. His breathing was slow. Lyra held his hand. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For remembering me in the dark." She kissed his forehead. "Thank you for giving me a reason to hope." He closed his eyes and did not wake. Lyra buried him beneath the oldest earth oak in the garden, its branches heavy with Zyran blossoms. She did not wear black. She wore the simple robes he had always liked, woven with threads of both worlds. For the rest of her days, she walked the garden every morning. She spoke to him as if he were still there, told him of new schools, of peace talks with distant stars, of the blue-eyed people thriving in their new home. When she passed many years later, they buried her beside him. No monument was built, only a single stone, carved with 2 words in both languages. Together always, the alliance did not fall. It grew, not because of weapons or laws, but because 2 souls once chose kindness over fear, and in that choice, they lit a flame that would never go out. The alliance between the Zenthari Dominion and the Human Coalition grew stronger with each passing season. Trade ships moved freely between star systems, carrying not just goods but ideas, art, and hope. Empress Lyra and Daniel worked side by side, their bond deepening not through grand declarations but through shared silences and small acts of trust. Yet peace, as they both knew, was fragile. It needed constant tending like a garden in harsh soil. One morning, a distress signal crackled through the Imperial comms network. It came from the Outer Rim colony of Kalis, a joint human-Zenthari settlement established just 2 years prior. The message was fragmented, panicked. Static swallowed most words, but one phrase repeated like a drumbeat. "They are here. They are here. They are here." Lyra stood in the war room, her silver eyes fixed on the star map glowing above the central table. Red markers pulsed around Kalis. Daniel entered quietly, his boots clicking against the smooth floor. He had aged slightly in the years since their first meeting. His hair now streaked with gray, but his presence remained steady. "What do we know?" she asked without turning. "Not much," he said. The signal cut out after 30 seconds. No visuals. No ship signatures. But the colonists were calm people. They would not cry wolf. Lyra nodded. She knew the settlers of Kalis, farmers, teachers, engineers. Dreamers who believed in the Alliance enough to build a life on the edge of known space. If they were afraid, something terrible had happened. "We must send help," Daniel said. "We will," she replied, "but we must be wise. If this is a trap, rushing in blindly could ignite another war." He met her gaze. "Then we go ourselves." The council erupted in protest when she announced her decision. Elder Vorlon slammed his fist on the table. "You are the Empress. You do not chase ghosts into the void." "I am the Empress who remembers what it is to be alone in the dark," Lyra said calmly. "If someone is calling for help, I will answer." Daniel stood beside her, silent but resolute. That was enough. They departed aboard the Dawn Chaser, a sleek vessel gifted to Lyra by human shipwrights as a symbol of unity. Its hull bore both Zenthari glyphs and human lettering. Inside, the crew was mixed, Zenthari pilots, human engineers, medics from both species. It was a living piece of the Alliance. The journey to Kalis took 3 days. Tension hung thick in the corridors. Daniel spent most of his time in the comms bay. scanning frequencies for any repeat of the signal. Lyra walked the observation deck, watching the stars blur past. She thought of the young scout she had been, lost and terrified. She would not let others suffer that fate if she could prevent it. When they arrived, the colony was silent. No lights, no transmissions. The planet's surface showed no signs of fire or bombardment, just stillness. "We are being scanned," said the human pilot Lisa from the bridge. "But not by our tech. It is older. Harsher." "Lower the shields," Lyra ordered. "Show them we come in peace." Daniel frowned. "That is risky." "Sometimes peace requires risk," she said. The Dawn Chaser descended slowly, landing near the central habitat dome. The air outside was cold, the sky a pale green. As they stepped onto the surface, their boots crunching on frost, they found the colony empty. Doors hung open, meals sat half-eaten on tables. Toys lay abandoned in the play yard, but there were no bodies. No signs of struggle. "They took them," whispered a Zinthari scout, her voice trembling. Daniel knelt by a child's drawing left on a bench. It showed two stick figures, one violet, one brown, holding hands under a sun with too many rays. His throat tightened, then a sound. Faint, rhythmic, coming from the old mining tunnels beneath the colony. Lyra signaled for silence. They moved as one unit, weapons ready but not raised. Deep underground in a chamber once used for ore storage, they found them. Over 200 colonists, human and Zenthari alike, huddled together, wrists bound with crude metal cuffs. Their eyes widened with fear and then disbelief as they recognized the Empress. But standing over them, armed with jagged plasma rifles and wearing scavenged armor, were not pirates or rebels. They were Zenthari, but not of the Dominion. These were the exiles, those who had rejected the peace, who called themselves the true heirs of the old ways. Their leader stepped forward. His face was scarred, his eyes burning with fanaticism. "Empress Lyra," he sneered, "you bring your pet human to witness your shame." "I am Kale Wren," Lyra said, her voice cold. "You were banished for slaughtering a peaceful envoy. You have no place in our society." "We are the society," he spat. "You traded our strength for weakness. You bow to humans. You wear their cloth. You forget who we are." "I remember who we are," Lyra said. "We are not murderers. We are not thieves. We are builders. And you are nothing but a ghost clinging to a dead past." Kale laughed. "Then let the ghost take your precious colony. Let the humans see what happens when they trust a Zenthari." He raised his weapon toward the nearest child, a small human girl with wide eyes. But before he could fire, Daniel moved. Not with violence, but with speed. He threw himself between the gun and the girl, arms spread. "Shoot me," he said, "but know this. If you kill one of us, you kill the chance for your people to ever come home." Kale hesitated. His finger twitched on the trigger. Lyra stepped forward. "You want to prove your strength? Then prove it by letting them go. True power is not in taking lives, but in sparing them." For a long moment, no one moved. The air felt thick enough to choke on. Then from the back of the chamber, a young exile dropped his weapon. Another followed. Kale's face twisted in rage, but his followers were wavering. "You betray me," he snarled. "No," said the first exile, a boy barely past adolescence. "We remember the old stories. The ones before the war. About honor. About mercy. You forgot them." But she did not. Kale lunged at Lyra, blade flashing. But Daniel was faster. He caught the exile's wrist, twisted and disarmed him in one smooth motion. He did not strike. He simply held the man still. "It is over," Daniel said. Kale collapsed to his knees, not from pain but from defeat. The fire in his eyes guttered out, replaced by something hollow. The colonists were freed. The exiles surrendered without further bloodshed. As the Dawn Chaser prepared to leave, carrying both rescued settlers and captured rebels, Lyra stood once more in the empty colony square. Daniel joined her. "You gave them a choice," he said, "even when they did not deserve it." "Everyone deserves a second chance," she replied, echoing his words from long ago. He smiled faintly. "I suppose I did say that." Back on Zyra, the council was divided. Some demanded the exiles be executed as traitors. Others argued for rehabilitation. Lyra listened to all, then made her decision. The exiles would not be punished with death. Instead, they would be sent to a new settlement, on a neutral world far from both Dominion and Coalition space. There, they would build a life from scratch with no weapons, no propaganda, just the chance to choose who they wanted to be. It was a gamble, but Lyra had learned from Daniel that the greatest risks often led to the greatest rewards. Weeks later, a message arrived from the new settlement. It was short, just 3 words. "Thank you, Empress." Daniel read it over her shoulder. Looks like someone remembered kindness after all. "Perhaps," she said, "or perhaps they are just beginning to learn it." As the seasons turned, the alliance deepened. Schools taught both human and Xanthari history. Artists blended music and color in ways never seen before. And in the heart of the Imperial Citadel, a small garden grew, planted with earth flowers and Xiran vines, watered by hands of both species. Lyra and Daniel walked there often. They did not speak of legacy or history. They spoke of the weather, of books, of the strange taste of human chocolate that Lyra had finally learned to enjoy. In those quiet moments, they were not Empress and Pilot, not symbols. Just 2 people who had found each other across the stars and refused to let fear win. One evening, as the twin suns set in a blaze of orange and violet, Daniel said, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had not found your pod that day?" Lyra looked at him. "I do not wonder, I know. I would have been lost, and the Dominion would have chosen war. But you gave me more than rescue. You gave me a reason to believe in something better." He nodded. "And you gave me a home I never knew I needed." They stood in silence as the first stars appeared. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and unknowns. But here in this garden, under these skies, there was peace. Not perfect, not permanent, but real. And that, they both knew, was enough. The alien Empress suddenly realized the human man before her was the one who once saved her. The grand hall of the Xanthari Imperial Citadel stretched high into the clouds of the capital world Zyra. Walls of living crystal pulsed with soft blue light, responding to the mood of the Empress who sat at its center. Empress Lyra of the Xanthari Dominion watched the human delegation march forward across the polished obsidian floor. Her silver eyes narrowed slightly. Humans were unpredictable, emotional, fragile. Yet here they stood, bold enough to request an audience after decades of silence. Lyra's people had once fought the humans in a brutal war that ended not with victory, but exhaustion. Both sides pulled back, nursing wounds and nursing grudges. Now, after 10 long cycles, the humans returned, not with weapons, but with words. Lyra had agreed to hear them, though her council warned against it. Trust, they said, is a luxury empires cannot afford. The humans wore plain gray uniforms without insignia, no medals, no armor, just cloth and quiet dignity. At their front walked a man named Daniel. He was not the tallest nor the loudest. His dark hair was short and slightly messy, his face lined with the kind of weariness that came from long journeys and harder choices. He did not bow when he reached the foot of the throne. Instead, he simply stood and met her gaze. That alone made Lyra pause. Most beings trembled in her presence. Even her own generals lowered their eyes. But this human looked at her as if she were just another person, worthy of respect but not fear. "Speak," she said. Her voice carried through the chamber like wind over glass. Daniel took a slow breath. "We come in peace, Empress, not to ask for favors, but to offer a new beginning. Our peoples have bled enough. Let us build something better." A low hiss rose from the council seated along the curved dais to her left. Elder Vorlan, his face etched with ancient scars, leaned forward. "Peace is a human trick. They speak softly while sharpening knives in the dark." Daniel did not turn. He kept his eyes on Lyra. "We made mistakes. We admit that. But we also remember those who showed us mercy, and we try to do the same." Those words struck something deep inside her. A memory flickered, distant, hazy, wrapped in the cold silence of deep space. She pushed it aside. It was nothing. Just an echo. "You speak as if you know our ways," she said. "I speak as one who once saw your heart," he replied. The chamber fell silent. Even the crystal walls seemed to hold their breath. Lyra sat very still. "Explain." Daniel's voice softened. 10 cycles ago, near the Varelli's Nebula, a Xanthari scout ship was caught in a solar storm. Its shields collapsed. The crew perished. All but one. A young officer stranded in a damaged escape pod, drifting toward the gravity well of a black hole. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Her fingers tightened on the arms of her throne. A human freighter found her. The captain wanted to leave. Protocol said no contact with enemy survivors. But one crewman disobeyed. He rerouted the ship's power, used the last of their fuel to match her pod's trajectory. He docked manually in zero gravity, patched her life support, and stayed with her for 3 full cycles until Xanthari rescue arrived. He never asked for anything, just said, "Go home safe." Then he vanished. Lyra stared at him. The memory crashed over her like a tidal wave. The terror of the void, the crushing pull of the black hole, the sudden vibration of docking clamps, the face at the viewport, calm, focused, human. She had been so young then, just a scout, reckless and proud. She had tried to thank him, to record his name, but he refused. He smiled faintly and said those words, "Go home safe," and she had. She returned to Xanthari, space changed. She spoke of the humans' mercy. She argued against total war. She rose through the ranks not by destroying, but by understanding. And now he stood before her. "You," she whispered. Daniel nodded. "Me." Chaos erupted. Elder Vorlon shot to his feet. "Deception. This is a ploy to weaken us. Detain him. Interrogate him." Others shouted in agreement. The air filled with sharp clicks and guttural commands. Guards stepped forward, energy staves humming to life. But Lyra rose. One motion of her hand silenced the room. Her voice, when it came, was calm but absolute. "This man saved my life. By the oldest law of our people, a life debt is sacred. His word is my word. His safety is my honor." She descended the steps of her throne, her long violet robes flowing behind her. She stopped before Daniel, close enough to see the faint scar above his eyebrow, the tired kindness in his eyes. "You never told anyone who you were." He gave a small shrug. "It wasn't about me. It was about you making it back." She studied him. This quiet man had altered the course of her life, and by extension the fate of 2 civilizations without ever seeking credit. That kind of humility was rare, even among her own kind. "You came here knowing I might not remember you," she said. "I came because someone had to try," he answered. "And maybe I hoped you'd remember." Around them, the council watched in stunned silence. The tension that had filled the hall for years began to crack, not with force, but with something far more dangerous. Hope. Lyra turned to her people. "For too long we have seen humans as enemies, but this man proved that courage and compassion are not bound by species. If one human could risk everything for a stranger in the dark, then perhaps our peoples can learn to trust again." She faced Daniel once more. "You will stay, not as a prisoner, not as a guest, but as my advisor. Help us shape this peace." He hesitated. "I'm just a freighter pilot." "You are the man who pulled an Empress from the edge of oblivion," she said. "That makes you more than most." In the days that followed, Daniel remained aboard the Imperial Citadel. He was given quarters near the observation spire, where the stars were clearest. Lyra often joined him there in the quiet hours between duties. They spoke of small things, human music, Xanthari poetry, the taste of earth-grown coffee versus Zyran spiced tea. They did not speak of war or treaties, not yet. First, they learned each other's silences. One evening, as the twin suns of Zira dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in violet and gold, Lyra asked, "Why did you really come back?" Daniel looked out at the stars. "Because I believed you were different, and because I never forgot you either." She turned to him, her silver eyes reflecting the dying light. "Then we are both fools for remembering." "Perhaps," he said with a faint smile, "but sometimes fools change the galaxy." Months passed. Negotiations began. Human engineers worked alongside Xanthari architects to design joint outposts. Medical teams shared knowledge of diseases and cures. Trade routes reopened, not as acts of suspicion but of cooperation. And through it all, Lyra and Daniel stood at the center, not as ruler and subject but as partners. The council watched, wary at first, then curious, then slowly convinced. Even Elder Vorlon stopped his protests, though he never fully smiled. But he stopped calling humans vermin. That, Lyra thought, was progress. One day, a young Xanthari student asked Daniel why he had risked his life for an enemy. Daniel thought for a long time before answering, because in that moment she wasn't an enemy. She was just someone who needed help. And help is never wasted. The student wrote those words down. They spread through the academies. Soon, children on Zyra recited them alongside ancient proverbs. Years later, historians would call this era the dawn of the Alliance. They would credit Empress Lyra's wisdom and Daniel's bravery. But those who lived it knew the truth. It began with a single act of kindness in the endless dark. a choice made not for glory but for goodness. Lyra never wore her battle armor again. She chose simpler robes, woven with threads gifted by human artisans, and Daniel, though he never sought fame, became known across both worlds as the man who taught an empress to believe in second chances. In the end, it was not fleets or weapons that saved them. It was the quiet courage to see past fear, to remember a face in the stars, and to say, even after all this time, thank you.